Alright, Week 9 MASL predictions. Before we jump into this week's picks, you can see my picks from last week off to the side, including which ones I got right and which ones I got wrong. Not exactly the greatest week for me, but that's all in the past now. Let's move on to this week's games. Starting off, we have Utica City FC at the Harrisburg Heat. Now, I was tempted to make this my game of the week, which I know might be surprising because Utica City is one of the best teams in the league and Harrisburg has one win. But the thing to remember about Harrisburg is that they really seem to play divisional opponents very close. So look at last week's game against Baltimore. It was a one-goal game. Harrisburg hung in for pretty much the entire game there. Harrisburg plays divisional opponents tight all of the time. So I think this game is going to be close as well. That being said, I think Utica City is the better team overall, and I think they're going to win this one. Next up, we have the St. Louis Ambush at the Orlando Seawolves, which is my game of the week. These two teams have played once before. It was the first game of the season where St. Louis won 5-4. Since then, St. Louis has been playing consistently well. They had an impressive win last week against Kansas City. In Kansas City, they did come home and stumble a bit against Utica, but Utica is a great team, and St. Louis, I think, overall is very solid, clearly better than last year, and definitely a good team. On the other hand, Orlando, they had a slow start to the season, but things do seem to be coming together for them now, and before the season started, I thought they could be a very dangerous team. Now, unfortunately, at the time I'm filming this video, Orlando has yet to play Milwaukee, so I don't have a true gauge to see where Orlando is sitting this week, but I have no reason to believe that they won't continue to improve like they have all season. So, we're left with St. Louis, a consistently solid team, and Orlando, a team on the rise that I think could be very dangerous, which is why this is my game of the week. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I'm going to give the edge to St. Louis in this game. Orlando, I think, is going to be great by the end of the season. I'm just not sure if they're there yet, so I'm going to give the Ambush the nod in this one. Next up, we have the Turlock Express at the El Paso Coyotes. Turlock had yet another loss last week at San Diego, and they are still winless on the season. Meanwhile, El Paso lost a back-and-forth game to the Sidekicks. Both of these teams have struggled a fair bit this season, but I still think El Paso is overall a better team, and they're playing at home, so I'm going to give the Coyotes the pick on this one. Then on Saturday, for the third week in a row, we have the Baltimore Blast playing the Harrisburg Heat. But this week, the game is in Harrisburg. Now, as I've already said, Harrisburg tends to play their division opponents very closely, very tightly. But the Blast have risen to this challenge time and time again. Yes, their games with the Heat tend to be close, but more often than not, Baltimore walks away with the win. And I see no reason that won't repeat itself this week. It's going to be a close game, but I'm picking the Blast. St. Louis Ambush at the Florida Tropics. Florida made things interesting last week against the Wave, and they almost came all the way back to beat Milwaukee in Florida. But I'm not so sure if that's a reflection of how good the Tropics are, or if it's a reflection that the Wave got a bit sloppy towards the end of the game. Meanwhile, as I've already said, St. Louis has been a consistently good team this year. The last time these two teams played, St. Louis came out on top, so I'm going to pick the Ambush to win this one as well. Rio Grande Valley Barracudas at the Dallas Sidekicks. Let's talk about RGV first. Wowza. The Barracudas finally got over the hump last week. They've come so close multiple times now to beating some of the league's top tier teams, and last week they did it in convincing fashion against the Flash. The Barracudas are looking real good. Meanwhile, the Sidekicks, they won that back and forth game against the Coyotes. The Sidekicks this year, they strike me as a perfectly average team. I think they'll hang in there well enough against the Barracudas, but I'm going to give the nod to RGV in this game. Mississauga Metro Stars at the Milwaukee Wave. Milwaukee, they had a close call in Florida. I don't know what they did in Orlando, but overall Milwaukee has been just so good this year, and Mississauga has really not been that good this year, especially when they're playing outside of Canada. When these two teams did play in Canada, Milwaukee still managed to win. I see no reason the Wave won't win this game as well. I'm picking Milwaukee. Orlando Seawolves at Utica City FC. As I've already said, I see Orlando as a team on the rise, and I think if this game was a bit later in the season, it'd be a really fun one to watch because Utica City has been a great team all year long. That being said, I'm still not so sure if Orlando is quite there yet, so I'm going to give Utica City FC the pick in this one. Mississauga Metro Stars at the Kansas City Comets. Much like Milwaukee, Kansas City beat Mississauga in Canada earlier this year, and I see no reason they can't repeat that in the States. I'm picking the Comets. Ontario Fury at Flash de Monterrey. Ontario is coming off a nice win over the Stars. Meanwhile, the Flash are coming off a tough game in RGV. Now, as I alluded to earlier, I think the Flash's loss last week is more a reflection of how good the Barracudas are. And it's not a signal that the Flash maybe aren't as good as we thought they were, and it's not a sign that the Flash are struggling. I still think the Flash are a great elite team, and I'm going to pick the Flash in this game. But much like last week, I'm putting the Flash on upset watch because the Fury have shown signs of pure greatness this year. And if that version of the Fury shows up in Monterrey, it's going to be a real good game, and it could go either way. And finally, we have the Turlock Express visiting the Rio Grande Valley Barracudas. I think I've already made it pretty clear. The Express, they aren't so great. The Barracudas, they are. I'm picking RGV in this game. So there we have it, my Week 9 MASL predictions. Make sure you come back next week to see which ones I got right, as well as which ones I got wrong, and to see my predictions for Week 10 in the MASL. In the meantime, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next week.